You got your mama's sunshine, you got your daddy's rain. You're like a piece of heaven in a hurricane. And it's bubbling over.
Hey everybody, welcome to this week's podcast. This is Josh Vietti. I'm here with Tom Hollenbeck,
Hello.
Pastor Ron Vietti, and Vincent Sierra.
Hey.
And we are the Off the Mountain crew with you guys today, whatever you're doing. If you're driving around, be sure to be nice to people on the road. Be patient. I think that's one of the things that, is hardest to work on these days is just to be patient on the road. Because not everyone is thinking like you are on the road, are they?
No, they're not.
Like
They should be.
Right. You ever think about how much we trust people when you're on like a 2-lane highway? Like you really trust
I have.
complete strangers just to stay focused and to stay in their lane. Now,
What about the bicycle riders?
Yeah.
They're really taking their life into their own hands or into someone else's hands by trusting people.
Well, the question is locally here in Bakersfield, if you know, that's where we're from. The question really is it safer to ride on the street with all the traffic or on our bike path? Because it's pretty wild. It's pretty
The
wild.
bike path.
It's pretty wild out there.
Yeah,
it
it's
is.
pretty wild. I would take the bike path.
Vince and I
Definitely.
were jogging on the bike path the other day, and at one point we started walking because I like to walk on the bike path.
Well, you'd
instead of
already
run.
done 59 miles.
I had already done 0.5 miles, yeah. and we look over, and there was a zombie came up out of the bushes, literally started following us.
This is actually a pretty true story.
It
I
was the
mean,
craziest thing I've ever
I
seen.
mean, yeah, it was nuts.
I hate to say that, but it's it's a dangerous world out there. And here's the thing, like people think differently than you, and they are going through different things than you're going through, right? And I'm not giving anyone a pass. Okay, I don't think it's okay to drive unsafe. I don't think it's okay to yell and scream at people or anything like that. But you have to understand that whatever they're going through in your life is not your problem.
Right.
You do your thing. And people are going to offend you. They're going to bother you. They're going to frustrate you. Sometimes it's the people in our own homes that frustrate us and bother us, right?
Mm-hmm.
To the effect that we let those things to the effect that we let those things bother us
Still our joy.
is up to us.
Yeah.
And so today, whatever you're doing, I would encourage you to realize that you're in charge of your emotions. You're in charge of your thoughts, which pretty much are the things that create your emotions, right?
Well, they say you can't avoid the bad things people are going to do to you. I mean, it's going to happen. It's just life.
Yeah.
But you can control the way you react or respond to those things. And going back to, and we're talking about, sometimes the dangers of riding a bicycle on the road because some people are texting, whatever. It's kind of like, you put your life in their hands. I walk a lot. I don't run because, basically I don't see a need to run unless someone's chasing me. That's the only good thing in running that I see. But I do try to walk. And just a health tip, I'm probably being Downer Debbie here. But in the winter, I'm trying to find places to walk. And I've been going sometimes to the mall to walk. And it hit me the other day because I'm real health conscious. I walked by the body bath place, and oh my gosh, I don't know what kind of chemicals are coming out of there. You can't even breathe. And then I go by another building where they're doing construction. There's so much sawdust in the air, I start sneezing. And then I walk around the corner, and the pest guy's spraying the whole mall. And I thought, is this really doing me good to be walking here breathing all this stuff? Or should I get outdoors in the very healthy air of Bakersfield, which it is pretty healthy in the winter.
It's better.
And so
definitely
anyway,
better.
just a tip, when you walk, try to, walk in a place not close to the freeway. I go to LA and they walk close to the freeways. They walk down Sunset Boulevard, take their deep breaths with their dumbbells in their hand. And I go, you're probably doing more harm than good by breathing in these gas fumes. So when you do walk, and I really do believe in walking, try to go out to a park somewhere where the air is good.
Yeah.
And get some of that, fresh air instead of maybe walking
Have you ever?
indoors, which I've been
this
doing.
is completely off topic, and we'll get to our topic in a second. But have you ever read anything about grounding? How people like walk
Grounding,
on,
I believe in grounding. I don't do it.
on
Your
the ground
mother,
with their bare feet?
your mother's one of the most healthy people I've seen. Now, your mother is barefooted 365 days a year. She never wears shoes. She's outside during the winter barefooted. She's everywhere. She's really grounded.
Huh. Interesting.
And
She is healthy.
so anyway,
She's very
we're going to talk, I think, Josh, about the bondage of expectations. Isn't that what we have down to talk about?
Yeah, in this life, depending on your family situation, your work situation, whatever you have going on in your life, and also your personal disposition, you're going to feel a certain level of pressure from other people. And I think that a certain level of it is natural and normal and within the realms of life. It's what it is. I think that a little bit of pressure helps us to be motivated to do things that we need to do. But there is a line I think we can cross where it becomes very unhealthy, where maybe you're in a relationship and it's in this relationship, it's really imbalanced, and the other person gets to the point where they are controlling your life, or you feel like they are. You can get to a point where you're at a job and you and a lot of people probably feel this way, and it's probably not this way for them, but your boss is really taking advantage of you. That can happen. A lot of people probably feel that way again, but it can actually happen. You can worry so much, like we were talking about before the podcast. We were talking about anxiety and how it's hard to sleep sometimes. And we can lay in bed and think, oh man, I can't believe I said that to that person, or I can't believe that this person thinks that, or posted it online, or whatever it might be. And we just sit there and we ruminate and we think about these things, and it affects us. It causes us to have stress, which releases cortisol, which is really bad for our bodies.
Destroys your mitochondria.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot that has to do with health, but even on a spiritual side, and I think that that's something that is within our wheelhouse, really, really so much so, that on a spiritual side, if we're constantly worried about what other people think, then that means that we're not putting energy into what God has for us.
But you said something about other people can place expectations on us, which they can, but you could come under bondage to self-imposed expectations. And if you're somewhat of a perfectionist like me, this can be debilitating. Sometimes we put on ourselves expectations that are beyond God's will for our life. Let me give you an example. I've been extremely blessed on social media, Facebook especially, that I've been blessed with, thousands of friends, and I am really appreciative of that. But I've always felt like that no matter what people write me or text me or message me on Facebook, even if they say something like, Pastor, that was a fabulous sermon on Sunday, I feel that I'm supposed to get back to them and acknowledge them. At least I did 2 years ago, and say thank you and call them by name, because I so much appreciate them taking time to tell me that they enjoyed the sermon. But now it's out of hand, because with this many thousand people, I can't get back to all of them. I just kind of cried uncle. And when I don't, I start feeling guilty. And I want to help everybody so much. I want to give them the honor and respect they deserve. But I'm at a place now where I've given up. There's no way I can do this. But I feel guilty about it, because I put these expectations on myself, and I don't think that they're God's expectations of me. Does that make sense?
It definitely does.
And it seems like a lot of people do that. A lot of people put these expectations. I remember I was working out in the gym one time with a friend of mine, and I don't remember what it was necessarily or why my mind went there, but I it's like, to motivate myself, I started belittling myself. I started calling myself a name. I can't remember what it was, but I started like looking in the mirror as I was doing the workout, and I was like, come on, come on, jerk, one more, or come on, idiot, like one more. And I was just doing it. And my friend goes, why do you do that to yourself? And I looked at him and I go, do what? He goes, you belittle yourself as you're working out. And I just never saw it before. And for some reason, it was some sort of motivation I had developed over however many years. And it is interesting how people can, whether you self-impose this or, you let somebody else put this on you, it is very interesting how we as people will put these expectations on ourselves that whether we can meet them or not, they're not always the healthiest.
But did anybody ever call you an idiot?
Not
when
that
you were little?
I don't know.
See, I had
getting
the
some
same
therapy now.
problem, but Debbie found me years ago. I'd say, "You idiot, you dummy, you dummy," and Debbie said, "That's what your dad said about you." And I said, "That's true," and it's in my heart and mind.
Yeah.
I'm calling myself what my dad used to really. I forgot what different words he used. But it came across to me, you're a dumb and you're an idiot.
Well, I've noticed it with my daughter. My daughter doesn't say that about herself, but my daughter puts these expectations on herself that my wife and I are always like, Scarlett, it's okay. Calm down. You don't have to take this so serious. It's okay. And she's like, yeah, but if I don't, then this is going to happen. So I can't remember anybody ever saying those words to me, but I feel like there's something within me that, because I'm able to see it in my daughter, that it was just this expectation, this false, I did it to myself sort of thing. And for whatever reason, I chose those words to motivate myself.
I think there's constructive and then destructive, expectations, because there's both sides of the coin. Like Josh said, to open it up, like sometimes expectations can be good. They can be placed on us to cause growth in our lives. And then there's these destructive expectations that like sometimes they're either self-imposed, we put them on ourselves, or they come from other places. But the thing that we have to realize is that these expectations will shape us if we don't have some kind of control over them. Meaning that if you have destructive expectations in your life, those will send you down a very destructive path, because you're going to imply that you have to change these things about you. I was thinking about this as we planned to talk about this, and I started thinking, like, for a lot of people, the expectations are shaping them, and it's like by default, and they're not becoming the people they actually should be. So they let people speak into their lives, or they let these self-imposed thoughts speak into their lives. And because of that, they're missing out on who they can become because of the thing that they're letting them be shaped
Well, as I
by.
said in my comment earlier, I said that I'm a perfectionist, then I made my comment. That's the problem. No one's perfect. And sometimes if we expect ourselves to be perfect, that can really do something
Here's
to
a good
us.
analogy. I'm thinking of it as you guys are talking. Think of a high jumper, right? A high jumper. Their last jump is a failure every single time. Like their last jump is a failure, but they keep getting higher and higher and higher until that point. And the winner is the person who basically jumps the highest point before they fail. That's the winner. So I think that like it's okay to have expectations that are beyond our reach. I think that's okay.
Right.
The difference is you have to have a ton of grace and you have to have a ton of forgiveness for yourself when you do fail. When you get to the point where it's like, okay, I've done my best. And the people that can turn that corner of saying, I've done my best.
Yeah.
All right. And they wipe
I
their
think that's
hands
what this whole
and they move on.
podcast is about. Let me use another example that might really resonate with our listeners out there. Let's say that you believe that you're supposed to be a perfect mom who never makes mistakes. Well, you know what? You're going to make mistakes because you're not perfect. Learn to apologize when necessary and embrace the weakness. Then let your kids see that you're not perfect. That's pretty cool. Maybe you're not the best cook. Maybe you're not the best housekeeper. Maybe you're not someone who has all the answers all the time. I say just do your best. Let grace take care of the rest. Maybe your idea of being a perfect mom is not realistic. And so I think that you have to have a good, healthy picture of what you should be doing as a mom. But we see all the magazines, we go on social media, young girls today, they're seeing the bodies of some of these models and certain people on the internet, and we're comparing ourselves with them. We have to get back to reality and say, hey, I want to be a good mom, but am I going to be a perfect mom? Absolutely not. I'm going to make mistakes. And when I do, I will apologize if necessary. I'll make lemonade out of a lemon. Let my family see that I'm not perfect.
It comes down to really having an understanding of what you can and can't control. I mean, that is the basis of I think mitigating stress, because if you wake up in the morning, you have a lot of options, right? You have a ton of opportunities. You have a ton of things that you can control. But then there are certain things where you're just like, I can do nothing about that. So the ability to acknowledge that and the ability to turn the corner and leave it be, just let it be. Like a good biblical example of that is Jesus when he tells Peter, I'm going to be arrested and I need to go, this needs to take place. The events need to take place that are going to take place. And there's no responsibility for you. You just have to wait it out. And Peter couldn't handle that. Right? He couldn't handle it. And he lost, you could see him, he loses his faith. He loses his place in this hierarchy that Jesus had kind of put him in, where he's like in charge. He's saying, you're going to be in charge of the church. And all of a sudden he loses his calling. He loses his place because there's nothing he can do about the moment that's about to happen. So the ability for us to say, okay, I can control this, but I can't control that is
that's the key.
So huge.
See, up until about 5 or 10 years ago, I wanted to be able to take my shirt off and look like what I look like at 30. And I was always working on my abs. I was working on everything because I really wanted to be a picture of good health. And I found out that, to a certain degree, you just can't beat aging. It's going to happen. Your metabolism slows down, everything. And so what you said, Josh, there are some expectations that they're just not real.
Yeah.
And it does take some restructuring, because I think, Pastor, you said it, this idea of whatever expectation, not being a perfect mom or being a perfect whatever. I would like to ask the question, where did we get the idea that we had to be this thing that we've set for ourselves? Because the other day, someone looked at me and they're like, oh, you're getting gray hair. And then they kind of assumed that I was going to do something about it. And I remember thinking, why would I do something about it? Like, where does that expectation come from? I'm getting older. Everyone's getting older. It's gradually coming for us. But I think sometimes, you see these outliers, whether they're from Hollywood or maybe just people that you know personally, that their life went a different route, where typically they should look like this or they should act like this. Their life went a different route. And because of this specific outlier, now everyone tries to obtain that. It's something that I think a lot of times the illusion of what you see on social media, you don't know what the cost was to get there. As a guy, we see these other guys online, and I've seen some gray-haired men that are still, ripped. And you go, how did you get like that? I would like to think it's all natural. You eat like I do. You work out 10 times harder than I do. But I would like to assume that you're not taking anything
and
for
they are.
that.
They are more than likely.
Of course they are.
Sure they are.
Liver King is the example of that. He said, oh, I'm all natural. I'm all this. And then boom, he comes out. He's taking like 12 different things.
Well, you said earlier, what kind of price did they have to pay for that?
Right.
Well, some of them are going to die by 60, 65. They're going to die.
Right.
I mean, back in the steroid craze decades ago, they were burying bodybuilders right and left.
Yeah.
Because they, again, were living for the moment and not looking at the future. And isn't it true, as we get older, this becomes more and more real to us? Inner beauty is a lot more important than outside physical beauty.
Well, how many people,
appearance.
and I think this is the basis of misery, right? How many people do a lot to tell themselves and the people around them a story that they know deep down is not true? Good example. Mike Tyson's fighting at 57.
Yeah.
He just signed a contract to fight. And I'm sitting there thinking, he's going to fight at 57?
Yeah.
Like, how's he gonna have, how is he gonna train for this and do this? And I'm sitting there just like really racking my mind around. I'm like, this
Really?
is amazing. And then my wife's like, it's a money grab. And I'm
Yeah,
like,
right, exactly.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
and she
Yeah.
just put it in perspective. I'm like,
For sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
you're right. It's a
Who's
story.
he fighting? Jake Paul or somebody?
Yeah, he's a
One of-
YouTuber. Yeah.
How old is he? What's the age
is it
difference?
Jake Paul? Which one is it? There's brothers.
I don't know.
Logan
There's
and
Logan
I
and
think-
Jake.
Yeah, I think it's
It's
He's
the
fighting
younger
one of the two.
right?
I don't know.
And it's just a big circus act.
Yeah, it's money. He's already said he parties with the guy.
Should they even allow him to fight at that age? He's going to have a hard time getting a license, I would think, in some states.
I don't know.
It's on Netflix. It's like
Yeah,
a,
it's
it's
on
a whole,
Netflix.
Yeah, it's
yeah.
a big deal.
It's Jake Paul.
It's
Jake Paul.
It's entertainment.
That's
at
what
the
it
end of
is,
the day.
right? Exactly.
Yeah.
And I was just thinking about that. I was like, man, I don't want, like, there's nothing wrong with it. Whatever. That's fine. They're going to do the thing. But, I don't want my life to be built around some story that I'm telling people as much as I want it to be built around a true base, a true faith, a true life. And like you said, Tom, we are getting older, and that's just something you have to, embrace, and you have to do that. And yeah, I mean, it's okay to color your hair a little bit. It's okay to take a supplement here and there. Those things are fine. Nothing wrong with that. But
If you
be honest with
balance it
yourself.
out, keep it in balance.
Yeah, just be honest with yourself, because I think that's another
Right.
way that we can avoid being really highly frustrated with ourselves, is if we're
not
honest.
like
I love that you brought
mirror,
up the story of Mike Tyson, because that's an interesting one, because there is this bondage, this idea of these expectations that can be that they can become a bondage to us, because he was one of the greatest. I mean, some people say between him and Muhammad Ali, greatest fighter to ever live. In his heyday. And then he has a thing happen to him where he ends up going to prison, and he gets out and he wants to fight again. But he's labeled himself. He lives under this bondage, like, I am a fighter. This is what I do. And so he comes back, then we know the story. He bites the guy's ear off. Yeah. And then he just never can get back. But it seems like he never finds his place in life, because he let the bondage of Mike Tyson, the fighter, take over his life instead of being Mike Tyson.
When did he go bad? He went bad when his old trainer died. That old guy kind of was a mentor or like a father figure to him. When he died, Mike Tyson started getting off track. But, going back to this, it's easy to come under bondage to a reputation.
Yeah.
Some people have a reputation of being a funny person, so they think I have to be a funny person all the time. I spoke in Cal Poly, not in Cal Poly, I spoke in San Luis Obispo to a lot of Cal Poly students last Sunday, and someone came out of the women's bathroom and said, man, they're in there going, he is so funny, man. He gives us truth, and then he just cracks us up with his jokes and his humor. And so right away, what happened? I go, okay, shoot, I've got to be funny next service.
It's that comes from? It comes from, and this is coming from somebody who, I didn't have a lot of worth when I was a kid. I didn't have any self-worth. I got picked on. I was chubby. I was small. And all of a sudden, I cracked a joke in class, and everybody started laughing. And it was an accident. I just said something I thought was an observation, and everyone laughs. And so I was like, oh, I got worth from that.
Yeah.
I got some worth
Validation.
from that, some validation from that. And so we get caught up in this bondage of expectations because we think that our worth comes from something other than God. There's a couple scriptures that I wanted to share. Do you mind if I do that real quick? No. Well, I'll just share one. Galatians 1:10. Paul's writing this, and he's saying, For am I now seeking the approval of man or of God? Or am I trying to please man? If I were still trying to please man, I would not be a servant of Christ. And just that idea of, you can only try to please one master at a time. And whether it's yourself, whether it's somebody else, or hopefully it's God, you have to choose. You have to choose, and if you think about it, we think about approval. How good is man, your fellow man, at giving you approval? How good are they at it? They're not very good at it.
Yeah.
They're not. It's not like you walk down the street and you're like, man, that guy, he's gonna give me all the self-worth I need.
Right.
No,
We try to get it, though.
we do.
Yeah.
It's funny how we care about what people think and we don't even know who they are.
Yeah. Right. We don't.
Yeah.
I love
The
what
crowd.
I love
Yeah.
what you said about
Yeah.
being funny, Pastor, because I think that goes both ways too. Because there's this idea. One of the things that you were saying a lot was that's what I do. Like this is who you are, right? That's what I do. And I was telling Tom and Josh just this last Sunday, like, it's hard to like, because I do like naturally I say stuff that I shouldn't say or what, but it's just who I am. Like, I don't mean to be funny and I don't mean to be this person, but it's like, so sometimes I feel like I have to wrangle that in because people expect me to be, more studious or this person or that person. I'm like, but that's just not me. And I think that comes out in you too, where it's like, if you try to fight who you actually are, it comes off as disgenuine. But when you are just true to who you are and who's God's made you, and that's like you said, Josh, that's who you are, trying to please, then that comes off.
Well,
more
see, that's what
sincere.
shocked me last week because I wasn't trying to be funny.
Right.
I was just having a good time preaching. But I'm saying, and of course I'm mature enough not to buy into
Right.
that. But for a moment I thought, oh man, what did I do that was so funny? I go back to a time, Josh, when I was a very angry young man, extremely angry. And because of the way I was raised, I had kept all this anger down, and my dad abusing me, basically. And I kept it all, kind of deep down inside of me, and I never really let it out. And when I saw your mother, I got extremely jealous, and all of my anger started slowly coming out, unfortunately. And I went to work at a supermarket in Delano with a bunch of rough guys. And my anger was misinterpreted. I would get angry real easy, and these guys begin to think, oh, Bo Getty. They nicknamed me Bo Getty. Bo Getty's a tough guy, man. You don't mess with him. I had mental problems. I was a very angry young man. I needed someone to help me. And for example, one day they told me, they said, hey, Billy, I'll use a fictitious name. Billy used to work here, and Billy's like the toughest guy. Wait till Billy comes back here. He's at another store somewhere else, and someday he's going to come back here. Man, Billy's a nut. He's crazy. And so one day they said, hey, Billy's coming back. He got transferred back here to this supermarket in Delano. And they said, man, you know what? I can't wait to see what happens when Billy comes face to face with Bo Getty. He said, there's going to be a fight. It's because Billy, man, he'll throw cases at you and he'll put boogers on this and that, and you'll pick it up. And I said one day, well, Billy do that to me one time, and it's going to be the last time he did it. So they got all hyped. And so sure enough, Billy got transferred back, and this tough guy. And one day I already had kind of a
Chip.
What's that?
Chip.
He said
Yeah,
chip,
chip
yeah.
on my shoulder. And so one day I'm out there in the aisle, and Billy throws a case and hits me in the leg and almost knocks me down. And I turned around and I looked at him and I grabbed this case, put it over my head and slammed it on the floor. Cans went everywhere. And I said, you know what? It's me and you. Lunch break in the parking lot. This is it. Hey, Bo Getty's taking on Billy. We knew it would happen. And so I felt I had to fight this guy in the parking lot at lunch break. And it was all because slowly but surely, my anger had been misinterpreted as a tough guy, and I wasn't a tough guy. In high school, I got along with everybody pretty well. My friends all fought a lot, but I got along with everybody pretty well. And so I had a reputation, and I felt like I have to fight this guy. I have no choice. I have to do this. I have to do that, because that's what my reputation says I do. And so, and that probably isn't true for a lot of you, but I'm just saying you could come quickly under the bondage of other people's expectations. Yeah. For example, if I'm humorous in one sermon, because that's just kind of the vibe in that service, I want to be able to get up at the next service and go, I'm not going to be humorous at all. I want to be very serious. And I don't want to play to those expectations. So they can bring you under bondage real rapidly.
That's what Josh used to do to me, by the way. That's why he picked me up in high school, because he'd be like, Vince is crazy. I'm going to pick him up, and he's going to do something crazy this week. And I think he'd get everybody together and be like, Vince is going to do something crazy. And so I'd have to live up to it. I'm like, well, I guess I am.
Okay, that makes my point.
Yeah, it's 100%.
And if we're not careful, we maybe even subconsciously, we come under bondage to this.
Some days I didn't want to do something crazy, and you're like, Vince is going to do it, I swear.
Yeah, watch.
They even nicknamed me, and it got in my head, Bo Getty.
Right.
My name was Bo Getty up there.
Yeah.
And
sorry, I was laughing during the thing. I was thinking of Happy Gilmore. The guy's like, I'll see you in the parking lot.
Same. That was the word picture.
And shooters. Like,
well, lucky for me, because this guy was a tough guy. Lucky for me, I scared him enough with my craziness that right before the lunch hour, he came and apologized. And he said, I don't want to fight.
yeah,
and,
you should have played poker.
And so I lucked out, because he probably would have beat me up.
No, that's true. It's funny how your own commitment can get you in trouble.
Mhm.
And that, your level of commitment to whatever it is. That's why I have a very slow process in saying yes to things. Like you guys are like, sign up for this Spartan. I'm like, maybe. And it took 2 or 3 weeks and I'm going to do it, but I'm not going to do well. I know that I'm not going to do well. And I'm just saying that because I know myself. And I'm belittling myself, but
There you go.
but I know I'm going to finish. And
Yeah.
that to me is well, you
Yeah.
know what I
Yeah.
mean? And so I'm excited about
And that's
that.
the expectation to
That
finish.
is my expectation.
Yeah.
Yeah. My expectation is not what I mean by I'm not going to do well. I'm not going to win the race is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Can I say this? To be real and in the moment is refreshing. We call it transparency. People can become fake if they're not careful
Yep.
and try to live up to an image. I think it's so refreshing when somebody comes out and becomes transparent about something. For example, this young pastor was filling in for the lead pastor years ago when I was on vacation in another city. I think I was in Oregon or somewhere. I went to see the lead pastor because I had heard good things about him. And it so happened that one of the assistant pastors or youth pastor or whatever got up and gave the morning message. And he said something. Isn't this amazing? This is like 40 years ago. And this young man would never know that what he said that day is still with me to this day. And he got up and I forgot the context that he put this in, but he said, me and my friend was out playing tennis this week with a young man who was engaged to a beautiful girl. And we were playing tennis and it was kind of like a halftime break. We were going to switch sides. And I went over to my buddy who was another fellow Christian. I said, could you pray with me right now? He said, why? He said, man, that girl is knocked down gorgeous. And her and I, right before we finished that second game, we kind of locked eyes for a few seconds, and I don't think it was good. And right now I'm getting kind of some lustful feelings. Would you just pray with me right now, please? And that kind of thing is so refreshing.
Mm-hmm.
You go, wow, how cool is that for that to happen? And so...
Do you think pastors, and this is a good, I love this idea, like people that are in ministry and pastors feel like they can't be transparent because they feel like if they are transparent, people will stop listening or become irrelevant.
Oh, you're taught that in seminary.
Right.
Now, this was years ago in seminary. I'm not saying it's being taught today, but they tell you don't show your weakness in the pulpit. And I think we should do just the opposite of that.
Right.
I don't think you should overshare it, but I think people are looking for transparency.
Our perfection, I think, takes away from the gospel. When we act like we are perfect and we're all that and we have it all together, I feel like it takes away from the power of Jesus.
Well, what's our goal? My goal is not to present Ron Vietti on Sunday morning.
Right.
Sometimes my goal is to intentionally share some weaknesses from the pulpit. Because what I want the people to see when they leave is, you know what? He's a screw up, but God still uses him. So they'll have hope.
Yeah.
Last Wednesday, you shared, but you were talking about spiritual gifts, and you talked about when you first started out. And I haven't heard you share this part of your story, but you said that you would go to BC classes, you'd go to college, and you were deathly afraid to give these. You'd have to give a speech in front of the class.
Scared to death.
You're scared, and I've never heard you say that. I just, I've kind of assumed you've always kind of were the guy that could go up in front of people and talk because you do it so naturally. But it's crazy to hear that weakness when you said it. You said, I was afraid. I would. You said you just get so nervous. You're like sweaty and stuff to have to go up there and do that. And so,
I did. And the only way I got healed of that is when I became a Christian. My passion for Jesus, for God, was so strong that my story I wanted to tell was so important that I didn't care if I, showed my nervousness when I was up in front of people. I just had to some way get this story out. It was so important. And that's what it kind of brought me out of my shell, because in high school sometimes I would fake being sick on days we had to give oral reports.
presentations.
That's how scared I was of getting up in front of people
real
talking.
quick, I was just telling Josh, like before you shared that on Wednesday, this past Wednesday, I was telling Josh, I said, it's crazy how your dad can just go up there and just do his thing. And it's so, I just told you this, I said, it's so flawed. Like, it's like you don't miss a beat. And I know you're more critical of yourself than we're watching this and we're watching like, this is how can you just go up there and just do 45 minutes like nothing or 30 minutes? But then to hear your backstory to say, this wasn't something that came natural. It was a struggle.
But what's cool about
But it was cool for you to share.
What was cool about my past was that I got to grow with it.
Yeah.
I started talking to 2 kids. The 2 went to 4. The 4 went to 8. The 8 went to 30. The 30 went to 100. The 100 went to thousands. And so I grew with it.
I had a little bit of a different experience where you're like, hey, son, I want you to come out here and talk to the congregation. I was like 21. But I was so cocky. I just thought I could do it.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know, in the old sanctuary, I don't know how old you were, about 19, 20. My office was connected to the platform of the sanctuary. They were real closely connected. So I could hear everything going on outside. And one day we asked you to do a high school chapel in our Christian high school. And I'm sitting in my office and I hear, all that. I go, what the heck? And I went out and you had a Barbie doll in the pulpit and you set it on fire. And all these kids in our chapel, their eyes were like saucers. I don't know what you were doing.
Ben Shapiro thinks he's the first one to set Barbies on fire, but no, he's not. I did it back in the early 2000s.
What was your point you were trying to make?
I was speaking on James and how the tongue is set on fire by hell and
oh man,
those kids look scared to death.
Oh man, how many parent letters did you get that day?
And your future wife was sitting out there.
She was. I won her over. You know? But that's the thing.
Look at this man.
But here's me at 19, and I walk away thinking I killed it.
Yeah,
I did such a good job.
Oh, you killed it. Okay,
I did such a good job. And now I feel the same. I feel like I get nervous. I'm like, am I going to mess this up? You know.
That's good though. That's good.
Well, so it is good. It is.
You
good
want to? I don't like young men that think they go out there in the pulpit and they can kill it. They're overconfident.
Well,
I think it's great to stay nervous going, God, if you don't do this, this isn't going to get done.
Right, 100%. And what it comes down to me, one of the things I've learned a few things. First of all, basing it on what you're talking about being excited, Dad. You said you're excited or you're passionate is what you said.
Right.
Simon Sinek, I just watched a video with him on it because I was dealing with the same thing, nerves. And so I looked up this video and he said that he's interviewed a lot of athletes, like Olympian athletes, Olympic athletes or professional athletes. And he says he never hears them. The reporters will always ask him, were you nervous, going up there? And they always say the same thing. No, I was excited. And so he made the point that if you feel nervous, you need to retrain your brain to say, no, I'm excited about this, right?
That's good.
There's that side of it. And then there's also going back to what Vince said about being yourself. Like you have to be yourself. Like when we start taking ourselves too seriously or putting a pressure upon ourselves to be somebody else, to play a role,
right?
That's when the pressure really builds.
But I spoke about that last Wednesday night, about how that when I was young, I would listen to Chuck Smith and he would talk like this. And I thought, man, I want to be like Chuck Smith. And then time would go by and I would hear Jerry Cook. And he was so philosophical. And I thought, no, I want to be like him. And then I'd hear Jack Hafer using all these long words, very intelligent man. I want to be like him. And I tried to copy those guys for quite a few years. I tried to copy them. I told you, your cousin, my nephew, Rod Jones, was on staff with us. And he was there during an era when I was really into Jack Hayford. And so I would try to use all these long words. And one day after service, Rod had the gall to come up to me. He says, hey, you know what? For the last 3 months, I've been keeping track of all these long words you're using, and they're not even in the dictionary. He said, you're making these up. And I probably was.
That's
but
funny.
Going back, Josh, and changing the
Just to let you
subject,
know.
others can bring us into bondage of their expectations. Looking back, did you really play football for me, or was that the bondage of my expectations for you?
You're asking me my childhood.
Because you said something one time like, man, I played football for you. Because I know you wanted me. You played baseball. You were a good baseball player. That was natural. You were a very good football player. I think you're a better football player than baseball player.
I think there was some pressure involved in playing football.
Because I really wanted you to play.
But not just you. It was everyone. I mean, we went to a school where there was 110 people. And if you were male, you pretty much had to play football or else there was no season. So it was like all these other guys. You know, Vince knows what I'm talking about. We went to the same school. And so there was a pressure. But I did enjoy it. And I'm glad I did it. So look, I don't think that's a bad thing to try to live up to someone else's expectations until it becomes damaging.
Well, let me say to some of you
And I
men,
think that it can get to
some
that
of you
point.
men that may be listening out there, don't throw your expectations on your kids.
Yeah.
You've got to let them be who God has called them to be. I think you can overparent.
Yeah.
Do you believe you can?
If
You can
there-
overparent.
If there was a pressure that I felt from you, it would have been for a minute, and I don't think it was you as much as it was me putting this pressure upon myself, was to live up to your level of speaking ability or whatever. As I got older,
Yeah.
I started doing the same thing that you were doing, and I had this pressure. It was almost like when I went out there, everyone I felt expected me to be just like you.
Right.
Out there, and you were gracious enough to allow me to do it my own way, like lighting Barbies on fire and all that stuff. But no, I mean, that was how I survived, was to be myself, and so I had to overcome that pressure, which isn't easy to do, and sometimes I felt like I didn't do as well as I should have during certain periods of my life, but at other periods I did, and I've made it through. But you have to be yourself. And I can't say that enough. I can't go back and say, so like, if there's something that you feel, whether it's a personal goal or a personal expectation, or you feel like it's something that you want to do for someone else and it's healthy, okay, then do it your own way. That's my biggest advice.
Well, society can press us into a mold for sure. I think Paul even talks about that in Romans. For example, and you've heard me use this before, the man is supposed to be able to fix things. I don't do good at that at all. And as a result, I didn't pass it down to you. Your mother was laughing at me this week. I said, that shed out there, the playhouse for the kids needs some new siding on it. And she says, don't you dare try to do that. I said, why? Because it'll be a mess if you try. But I'm comfortable in my own skin. And I go, you know what? I'm not good at that. And I tried to convince your mother. I don't think I did it. But I said, I'm not good at it, Debbie, because I don't want to be good at it. She says, what do you mean? I am bored silly working on projects. I don't like it. I'd rather pay to have somebody else do it. So
What's funny is I have kind of the same thing. I'll go out and try to fix something, but I actually do enjoy it. The thing is, I'm terrible at it. I am terrible at fixing things. Like it is.
I passed it down to you.
But even though I want to be good, and
I didn't
try
teach you.
really hard. Like I just can't do it.
Did you ever fix your window? You
Did
fixed
I-
your window.
I've fixed a few things.
Yeah.
I did fix my window. Tom saw this. There are certain things I've gotten better at.
Yeah, see?
But it's like it goes back to that whole strengths based theory.
Sure, right.
That you can be as good as you can be at something, but you can't probably get a lot better. Like, I was probably never going to be in the NBA.
Yeah, probably.
Probably,
Yeah,
because
100%
I'm
probably.
5'8" and white and
Sure.
Still can do it.
and I can't
You
shoot
could've.
worth anything. No, I practiced a lot as a kid. I was like, I'm going to be good at basketball. I never was. I was never good at basketball. But there are other things that I can be really good at, And it's like the whole strengths-based theory is to focus on, find out what you're good at. And they argue that we should be teaching this in school as for young children. Find out what they're good at, then they can work really hard and be great at that.
So my counter to that, just really quick, and
Vince and I have been arguing about
No,
this
no, no,
for
for
does
years.
that make
4
me less
decades.
of a man because I can't fix
No,
things?
no.
I'm comfortable in my skin.
No, my only argument to this, and this isn't even my same argument with you, is that I do think and this doesn't particularly make sense in like fixing stuff, because I agree with you, like in practical things are things where you're going to gravitate, be good or bad. But in the areas that we are weak, God can intervene and do something in us to give us the strength to fulfill something that we're supposed to do. For example, your dad's area where he wasn't a good speaker.
Right.
I love that story last night because I'm like, God, you did something that was impossible in somebody that maybe never saw them as a public speaker in front of tens of thousands of
Sure.
people every weekend.
Spiritual gifts.
For sure. But even beyond, like it was just so much beyond. And so to me, I saw a power there where so I do think God uses our weaknesses, this thing that we may think we're not good at or we can never do. And God might burst something into us. But it goes back to the high jump thing. Because I was thinking as you were sharing the high jump story, you're saying the guys high jump and whoever gets to the toss. But those guys have to want to be there to begin with, in some sense, right?
Yep.
They put themselves in the position to compete for a high jump. You'd have to ask yourself seriously, did you ever put yourself in a position to actually be good enough to be a pro NBA player? Well, no, you didn't have. Now kids go to private school before, they're going to
Right.
training. So, could you have been? Maybe if you would have had all the right training. But again, it wasn't the thing you were passionate about, nor did you have the resources to do it. But in this case, I do think in these weaknesses that you can, God can show His strength in us.
Unfortunately, basketball players not in the list of spiritual gifts that's in the Bible.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm just saying like the practical. But I'm just saying like position. Like you talk about pre-gaming.
Right.
Like you don't. You like when we say, "Oh, I'm not good," like we say we're not good at these things. Well, I like what you said, Pastor, because you don't want to be good at them, or you can't be good at them because you don't have the resources. It'd be like saying, today, and this sounds cocky, but I'm not being cocky. I'm just being. Today, if I said like, I think I could go back to school and be a doctor in the next world, I'd think that about myself.
Yeah.
But that only comes with knowing that I know that I'd have to do a ton of work and a ton of learning and a ton of grind in order to get there.
But to go back to your point, is that your path? Is that
No,
the path
right?
that
I'm
God
not
has for
right.
you?
100%. So
when-
I think it has to be both.
Like Tom talked about last Sunday, he talked about Jeremiah 29:11. He mentioned Jeremiah 29:11. I have the plans.
You know the plan. Yeah.
I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. So I think that God has these plans and these ideas for us, but I think He also gives us the option of whether we want to work for them or not work
Yes.
for them.
Yes.
And-
good point.
Right. Yeah.
Well, you know what?
I agree with that.
Long story short, I do believe you could become a doctor. And you and I are kind of wired alike. I graduated honor roll, but you know what? It wasn't because I was smart, but I knew I would work however hard I had to work to get that. Yeah. I wasn't going to give up. But let's take another example here. We have this image of what a man is in culture today. A man is supposed to never cry. And for decades, I couldn't cry. And one day I remember I asked God to soften my heart. I saw a preacher on TV and he was preaching, he was crying, and I thought, man, that's really cool that this guy's that sincere about what he's talking about. And that day I prayed, and I prayed several times afterwards. God, soften my heart to where I could cry, and that I can feel, other people's pain in my heart. Well, some months back, I had someone that I thought was very close to me just blindsided me one day with a phone call full of cruel criticism. I mean, he criticized my walk with God. He said, "You're a fake." He was yelling at me. And as he yelled, I just sat there and broke down and started weeping. And I couldn't talk. He said, "Are you hearing me?" I said, "Yeah, I'm hearing you." I said, "You got me so wrong." I said, "My heart is so right with God. How dare you?" And I was weeping. And then afterwards, I felt totally embarrassed. Men don't weep. And so, because the image that society has given me, you don't weep.
Yeah.
But this was somebody that at one time I felt closer than a brother. And to hear him blindside me like that and challenge my Christianity, everything. And so we're more influenced by the world than we think we are.
100%.
And
you don't know it.
I still don't like to think back at it going, you sat there and cried in front of another man. But I was hurt going, why are you doing this to me?
Yeah.
Why?
We hate being vulnerable. I agree with you. Like I was just vulnerable with somebody a couple days ago, and then I was like, and I was having a real honest conversation with them, and then I was like, I showed weakness, and then I was like, and I went home and I was like, I don't want that person to think like it's just crazy how we live those expectations.
I think we should talk about maybe on our next podcast about masculinity. There's a movement right now amongst young people online, and I see it over and over, where they're trying so hard to bring back their masculinity that they're kind of missing the
Overcorrecting.
point, and they're overcorrecting, and they're being silly, and they're kind of turning into these sexist kind of, women are weak. It's weird. It's a really weird thing happening online, but it's not weird when you start thinking about the social landscape and what's happening socially. How there is a feminization of men, and there is an attack on masculinity. And so these young people are fighting it, and it's getting off base a little bit. So it'd be good to talk about. I think from our perspective,
Well,
you're older, we're all different ages, and I think it'd be good to talk
The
about
phrase
that.
is overused and a little outdated, but it has helped me refocus more than once when I say, it is what it is. Or like you said, that's just what I do.
One of the biggest things that I've seen a mature man do is when there's a big issue, and I've seen this with you, Dad, I've seen this with other people, when there's a big issue that it seems like the world is ending and our perspective is really bad, and you know, we're like, how are we going to get out of this situation? And you see this mature man stand up and say, let's just wait and see what happens. Let's not do anything right now. And there's a maturity, and I think a strong masculinity in that. There's a strength in that to say, you know what, whatever it is, it's not that big. It's not that big. Let's see what happens. Like, think about King David. Eventually, he took some rocks and he killed Goliath. But he watched Goliath a lot before he jumped into that fight. He observed. He waited. He came and went and came and went. Right. He was like, yeah, let's see what this guy's all about. And eventually, he was stirred up enough to do something in the right timing, which is another thing that is huge. You know, we might have these expectations, going back to that idea, of what we should do, but it might not be the right timing to do those things.
Do we ever take ourselves too seriously and God not seriously enough? You know, is it, again, is it just a worn out phrase when I say that I really do want to just live for an audience of one? I guess that's not totally true. I do want to live for more than an audience of one, but mainly an audience of one. And as long as I'm right in God's eyes, then I'm free to have a lot of flexibility on who I become. For example, am I comfortable enough in my own skin that if I start losing hair in my older age, that I start wearing some crazy hat on Sunday? Am I that comfortable in my skin to come out and say, hey, it's just what I do? You know what I mean? I'm losing hair. I'm going to wear a hat here. And just so I think that there's a lot of flexibility for us
Right.
in becoming who we are and being comfortable in our own skin, and not saying that certain things we do in life emasculates us.
You know, the people that we admire the most in this world are people that have set aside this care and worry about what other people think to an extent, right? They're just being themselves, and it works for them. And we look at them and we're like, man, that's amazing.
Who have been some of the more popular people in culture are people that come out and we go, they are so weird, but you can see they're organic. Tiny Tim years ago, skipping through the tulips or whatever. This guy was so weird, but it wasn't a put on. It's who he was. He was organic. And I think society and culture is somewhat attracted to people that are different than them. If they're organic. If they're fake, you're not attracted to them.
Weird Al Yankovic.
Yeah.
He was such an odd guy, and he just didn't fit in. And I remember as a young kid thinking, that guy's so strange. Like, what? But actually, he's pretty admirable. Like, he was really good at what he did, and he stuck with it his whole life. And you're like, man, like he just came up with a new song. I can't remember what it was. It was really funny.
But that's who he is.
Yeah, it's who he is.
And so I think we have to accept some of our imperfections and say, you know what? At this stage in life, I know I'm right with God, so this is just what it is. Am I the perfect mom? No. Am I the perfect image of a man? Well, in some people's eyes, maybe no, but I'm comfortable in my own skin. No, I can't fix things. No, I'm not always a macho guy, but I am who I am. This is who I am. And as long as I'm right with God, I don't think that should, affect your opinion of me.
Yeah. And I think, too, that it's good to not necessarily set these goals that are unrealistic, but I think it is good to work on yourself and be the best version of yourself. Because going back to not being able to play basketball or whatever, you know, that's okay. That there are, like, reminding yourself that there are things that I cannot do. There are things that I will never, ever be able to do or never be able to be good at. And I think that that's an okay list to start to build, but it doesn't mean that you stop being a better version of yourself. Like, read as many books as you can about how to be a better father, a better mother, a better whatever, but just give yourself some grace. Do the best that you can. Love the people to the best of your ability. And just remind yourself you're not as cool as you think you are.
Yeah.
You're just not.
There's always somebody bigger than you, better than you, smarter than you, always. And again, I think God wants us at that place to get up every morning and say, God, I can't make it without you today. What did Paul say, Josh? You were using verses a while ago.
Yeah.
But Paul, I was going to give you another one that he uses. And Paul says that I'm crucified with Christ. And it's no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me and through me. And that should be our goal, to get up every morning and say, you know what? I have a lot of weaknesses, but God, you're going to be my strength. And then again, give ourselves a little bit of grace and mercy, as you said, to be ourselves, to be organic, and not to have to not have to strive to fit in to culture's view of what a man is, or even fit into the mold of what Christianity thinks a man of God should be or a preacher should be.
Right.
I am what I am.
Yep.
And as long as I'm okay with God, then I got a lot of flexibility there.
It's 1 Thessalonians 2, 4-5 says, "But just as we have been approved by God to be entrusted with the gospel, so we speak, not to please man, but to please God, who tests our hearts."
Yeah.
That idea of testing our heart, where's your heart at? Where's it at? Is it in the right place? And I think that if it is, you do the best you can. And if it's not, then fix it. Fix it. Fix your heart.
Someday I might start wearing a hat, and I might dress a little crazier than I do today. Because if I ever start losing my hair, I'm gonna put a hat on, and I think I'm gonna have a whole new look to my wardrobe. But anyway,
just do different toupees every single time you speak.
And I hope you do, because I also want to wear a hat on Sunday. So I'll join you in the hat wearing on Sunday.
is there anywhere in the Bible that says a pastor cannot wear a hat?
No, but that's the expectations that that kill us, because it's like, when we come to church on Sunday, and I'm not, and again, there's obviously what's in the Bible, and then we stick to that, we adhere to that, because that's the truth. And then there's everything else, and it's like we add so much to that stuff that it becomes overwhelming. It becomes something we can't live up to.
Yeah.
And so the adding is what messes us up.
There actually is a Bible
Well, I
verse.
just don't want to come under bondage.
The covering of your head. I mean,
no, but I was going to bring up the point that some people would be such sticklers about this literal side.
but that's what I'm saying. You
No,
find
it does say this.
right.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying that you can pick out something, but it's not talking about.
It's in context. It has nothing to do with wearing a hat on
100%.
stage. Right.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? I think the bottom line is we don't want to come under bondage to other people's expectations of us. And we don't even want to come under bondage to our own expectations of ourselves if they're not biblical and what God wants us to be under bondage to. God doesn't want to be under bondage to anything. But anyway, long story short, let's get out of here. Another time.
We
another day.
have more work to do. This
Yeah,
isn't our
God
job,
bless you.
actually. So.
Love you guys.
All right. See you guys.
You got your daddy's ring. You're like a piece of heaven in a hurricane. And it's bubbling over like sweet champagne. You got your mama's sunshine. You got your daddy's ring. You got your mama's sunshine. You got your daddy's